uh, it is something that is very hurtful for me. So that topic I am going to have to wait on. And I will probably talk about that next week because I have to be in the right mindset to talk about what I wanted to do today. I mean, it's something that for me personally, I have to really be in the right mindset because it's for me is very disturbing, and it might be disturbing for you, but I also believe that when people look at this video or this recording after I do that particular show, some people may think that it's funny, but for me, I think it's very painful. So I'm going to put that to the side, and I'm going to do another show that I've been wanting to do since 1619 has been a hot topic, and whether or not we're going to teach it in schools. And, you know, again, as I've been saying, our history is very important to me. So I want to talk about Ruby Bridges and the Little Rock Nine. And I want to talk about her because, and talk about the Little Rock Nine because they were an important part of our schools, you know, integration and this segregation and, you know, all of this that was going on, you know, in the 1950s, you know, especially down south, you know, white people didn't want to integrate the schools. They wanted to keep us out. And when you hear the story of, you know, this child who was going to school, you know, it's just disheartening. So I'm going to start with a video, and the video, I'm going to play the video at length. It is a 9-minute video. And it's Ruby Bridges herself talking about what she felt and the things that she went through. And she's talking about it in front of a mostly white audience, you know. So after it plays, I will come back. I may stop in the middle, but I think I'm just going to keep the video going because I don't want to interrupt her. So let me go to this and let me get the right one here. And
may take your breath away, hopefully get you thinking.
The magnitude of that moment did not escape the nation's view. 6-year-old Ruby Bridges and 4 federal marshals.
We've been sent by the President of the United States, and we are here to escort you to school today.
The governor of the state decided that
I will not force my people to integrate against their will.
I didn't want to go to school with them.
Going through this kind of living hell, what would you expect?
Crowds of protesters lined the streets.
Teachers at the school refused to instruct her.
Governor George Wallace was blocked by literally standing in the door.
I said to keep these kids out of school.
200 people waiting at 8:30 in the morning to tell her they were going to kill her.
Then they had a machine gun beside their guns. They
threatened to poison Ruby.
President of the United States sent troops.
You are one of my heroes. I'm here because of you.
The governor called the National Guard.
All because of just one little girl.
He pulled his gun to shoot. Things were going to get really worse.
I can't believe this kind of stuff happens.
I would like to know what's happening to her.
Until now, she has never told the full story of what happened to her.
When they knocked on the door, my parents opened the door, and I remember standing there and seeing these 4 very tall white men. I remember them saying that we're federal marshals. We've been sent by the President of the United States, and we are here to escort you and your daughter to school today. I found myself in the car, driving this very short drive to this new school, and the minute we turned the corner, I saw what I thought was Mardi Gras. There were so many people standing out in the middle of the street, and they were screaming and shouting and throwing things.
I draw the line in the dust And I say segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever.
The car door opened and those federal marshals, they grabbed my hand. And I remember them saying, Ruby, walk straight ahead and don't look back.
I say to the mothers to keep their kids out of school, all together. We're white people. We don't want them to go to school.
One of the city policemen, he pulled his gun to shoot, and everybody said they knew probably to kill me. So if they killed the mother, the child wouldn't have went.
200 people waiting at 8:30 in the morning to tell her they were going to kill her. 200 people in the afternoon telling her they were going to kill her.
The crowd would come and they would bring a small baby's coffin, and they put this black doll inside of the coffin, and they would march around the school, and I would have to pass it to get inside of the building. And I used to have nightmares about the coffin.
This is a people's movement. It doesn't make any difference whether the major politicians are going to support you or not. If they don't support us in this movement that takes back our government and give it to us and let us run our own institutions, those who stand in the way are liable to get run over.
When I got inside of the building, I remember it being very quiet.
I received a call from the superintendent's office and asking me if I would like to take a first grade position. That morning when I arrived, of course, the anger and the hostility was palpable. I was told that if I went downstairs, I would meet my student. So I walked down to a cavernous basement area of the school. Those doors instantly opened, and amidst this towering presence of federal marshals stood the most beautiful little girl one could ever dream of seeing, looking so delicate, so unaware of the mantle for change she wore that day. And as I went over toward her to introduce myself, she came forward, and I think she felt she was pretty special, and she was, and she looked that way. She had a beautiful pink dress, party dress. And as I walked over to meet her, her bowed head sort of raised gently, and a little smile came across her face. And then those beautiful big brown eyes that she still has rose to meet mine. And, you know, it was a case of love at first sight. How could you not fall in love with a child like that in a moment like that? And so, leaving behind a cameo of the past, Ruby and I held our hands, left them, walked together upstairs to our first grade classroom, and began our solitary adventure.
I remember looking at her and thinking, she's white. I'd never seen a white teacher before. She looked exactly like the people outside. She wasn't.
By the next day, the crowds had doubled.
They kept pointing at me and shouting. They kept saying, we're gonna poison her, we're gonna hang her. I remember hearing my mom said that she would send me to school and that every day she would sit and pray all day to 3 o'clock until I walked back through the door. And the federal marshals, they met with my parents and they said, you should prepare her lunch and she should eat it at her desk. They actually thought that I was afraid of being poisoned. And I remember them coming to me and saying, why were you not eating? And why did you lie? And I said, because I want to eat lunch in the cafeteria with the other kids. The minute we got to the cafeteria and they pushed open the doors, nothing but empty tables. There were no kids. And I remember being so disappointed about that. I just knew they were in the cafeteria. I would go into this coat closet to hang up my coat, and every time I went into the closet, I would hear kids' voices. And I would mention it to my teacher, and she wouldn't say anything. And there were days when I would go back into the closet and I would just stand there just to see if I really heard them. And I did. You see, there were white parents who tried to send their kids to school with me. Those white parents had to cross the same picket line that I did, and they were never protected by federal marshals. As they crossed the picket line, the principal would take the kids and she would hide them so they would never see me, and I would never see them.
I went up to the principal and I said, why are they not with Ruby? And she said, well, that teacher won't teach her. And I said, well, I will teach them. And so shortly thereafter, they would come and join us for the afternoon. And I do remember that beginning, where there's 3 or 4 little kids just gingerly walked into that room, because that was the first time they had ever been in a classroom with a Black child.
I went in to sit down to play with them, but that is the day. Because a little boy looked at me and he said, I can't play with you. My mom said not to play with you because you're. And the minute he said that, I remember to this very day, it felt as if this weight lifted off my shoulders. All of a sudden, by him saying that, I knew why there were no kids there. And the truth is, even though he hurt my feelings, I was never angry with him. Because in my mind, I thought he was explaining to me why he couldn't play with me. He said, my mom said not to play with you. And I thought to myself, if my mom had said, Ruby, don't play with him. He's Asian. Don't play with him. He's Indian, he's Hispanic, he's white. If my mom had said not to play with him, I would not have played with him. So I wasn't angry with him. I understood.
One cannot underestimate the courage of Ruby and the power a child has.
I believe it was in the best interest of white and black to be in a segregated school system. But I was wrong.
Our children need to know that white folks and black folks, they stood together. Thank God for the teacher that was there. She was my best friend, and she taught me the lesson that Dr. King tried to teach each and every one of us. And that is, we should never judge a person by the color of their skin. I always say that she showed me her heart.
We had a grand time together, I think, side by side, just the 2 of us.
I believe that if we are going to get past our racial differences, it's going to come from our kids. But we as adults have to allow them opportunities to come together. I think it's important for kids to dream and be able to believe that they can follow those dreams. I don't think I would be here today if I wasn't dreaming.
Okay, so I didn't want to interrupt that video. I know it was long, but I wanted you to hear what Ruby Bridges, what she was going through. I think it's amazing how people teach their children to hate. Don't talk to them because they're, colored, or they're Negroes, or they're niggers. Don't talk to them, because they're spics, or, they're wops, or, it's to me, racism is a learned behavior. And I remember growing up when I used to read a lot about the history of the United States. And this is when I wasn't in school, and I remember seeing pictures of 1- and 2-year-old white children dressed as Ku Klux Klans. It's like they have on these sheets and these white sheets over their heads, whatever. And the parents thought it was great, that they looked cute. And I just remember thinking how sad it was, because they're going to grow up to be just like these parents. And now you have this little girl who is going to school, first grade, 6 or 7 years old. She doesn't know what is going on. And you have adults, grown adults, who are outside saying, I'm going to kill you. We'll kill the mother. This school is supposed to be white. We don't want to go to school with a bunch of niggers. I just think that that's just so profoundly sad. And this is another reason why we are where we are now in this country. So when you say that I don't want to, you know, I don't support 1619, why are we talking about the past? Why are we talking about the past? Well, the past keeps creeping into our future and into our present, because the people who don't want to talk about it are the ones that keep perpetuating the racism and the division that we have now. So if we can just stop that, if we can just, you know, learn how to get together and see that we're really not that different, especially when we're children. You know, I mean, come on. I mean, it's just like the episode in Roots, the original Roots, where you had the character of Kizzy, who was a slave, Kunta Kinte's daughter, growing up with the master's daughter. And they were supposedly friends, but of course they were never friends because one was never considered equal. And then one day, you know, Kizzy does something wrong. You know, master doesn't like it, so he sells her. He sells her away from her mother and father, the only family that she's known, and sells her. What does the, you know, mistress of the house do? Does she stick up for her friend? No. She's looking out the window as Kizzy is being sold, begging to remain with her her family. You know, and this is where you're when you grow up in a house like this, and you're trying to be friends with someone, but the atmosphere in the house just poisons you, then when you get older, you become like the people that you grew up with. You know, you could grow up in a house with everyone doing drugs. Chances are you'll end up doing drugs too, unless you're strong enough to pull away. And then when you are strong enough to pull away, you have people who want to talk about you and make you feel like, well, why are you doing this? You're stupid. Don't do this. Don't do that. And that's with anything. I mean, it's called peer pressure. That's with anything. You know, so again, I just look at, you know, you look at this, and even though when this was going on, I wasn't born yet, you know, but again, the people who don't want to talk about the past because they're embarrassed by it, because it's shameful to them, they're the same ones who keep perpetuating it in the present and are going to launch it into the future. And that is why America is so steeped in racism and divisiveness. It is so steeped in just the hatred of just being different. You know, and it's just something that I just can't, you know, I look at it and it just, you know, makes me angry. And I've said it over, and I know you guys have heard it from me, but in history, wherever you go, you're gonna trip over one of us, because we are here. We're everywhere in this country. No matter, you know, what we've done, where we've come from, whatever, we are so ingrained in this country. So on that note, I'm going to share this video. And this one is, it makes me sad because you hear it from the Little Rock Nine, 40 years, 30, 40 years after the fact, and how they felt. And, you know, just imagine going to school like that, you know, and again, you know, I just remember that, you know, when my sister was a junior in high school, you know, the same school that I went to in a white neighborhood, they were literally kept in the school. Now, this was like in the 70s. They were locked in the school by the police for 24 hours because the people in the neighborhood were yelling and shouting that if any Black students came out, they were going to hang them and kill them. You know, that went on for 24 hours. You know, and that was only 24 hours. So can you imagine what it would have been like if you're dealing with this day after day after day after day for a whole year, for, you know, for 4 years, whatever? The stress, the anxiety, talking about getting PTSD, that was, PTSD was back then. PTSD was 1619. PTSD was in the Middle Passage when they were bringing us over here. You know, and you know, it pisses me off, but at the same time, it just makes me profoundly sad. So on that note, before I totally lose it and break down, I'm going to share this next video.
Governors and school districts to mobs of angry whites. Well, the weight of this war on racism rested on the very smallest of shoulders. The young Black children who walked the longest walk past the vicious taunts of the white protesters to the schoolhouse doors. Nowhere was this ugly struggle more evident than in Little Rock, Arkansas. 1957, Arkansas. The nation was riveted by the Little Rock Nine, 9 Black teenagers who were set to integrate Little Rock Central High School. But it seemed the entire state of Arkansas meant to stop them. The governor called out the National Guard, not to protect the students, but to block their entrance to school. And threatening white students jeered them at every turn. Finally, the Black students were allowed to enter the school through a side door, and the white mob erupted in a riot. President Eisenhower sent over 1,000 members of the 101st Airborne Division to Little Rock to escort the students to school. Each student was issued their own federal bodyguard just to attend class. But once inside the schoolhouse doors, the Little Rock Nine found that their struggles for respect and equality had only just begun. 7 of the original Little Rock Nine are here today, and in a few moments, they're going to come face to face for the first time in 38 years with some of those white students at Central High School who tormented them. One who chanted protests outside the school, another white student who hurled a bowl of soup on a Black student, and yet another who witnessed it all but stood by in silence. They come today asking for forgiveness. But first, you know, there's a saying that goes like this: if it doesn't kill you, it will make you stronger. I think that's especially true of the first Black students to integrate Central High School. Terrence Roberts is now a professor at Antioch University in California who recalls the pain of that era, but also an act of kindness that he says he will never forget. Melba Patillo Beals was only 15 when she integrated Central High School. She chronicled her battles in a book called Warriors Don't Cry. Ernest Green recalls each day was like going to war and says not a day went by when one of the Black students did not want to quit. Thelma Mothershed Ware is a retired teacher and feels that the traumatic experience of integrating Central made her a better person and teacher. Doesn't kill you and make you better. Jefferson Thomas says that he made one white friend at Central High, an atheist who believed that there could not be a God because no God would possibly allow his Black children to be treated this way. Carlotta Walls Lanier's family home was vandalized during integration. Carlotta's still trying to forget all of that ugliness. And Minnie Jean Brown Trickey went into the all-white school with high hopes for a new America. But she says when she stood up to the harassment and abuse, she was expelled. So you didn't make it through the first year?
No, I didn't.
You didn't. Do you regret now not making it through the first year?
Very much.
Mm-hmm.
It was the worst thing that ever happened to me, to
Because-
have to leave.
To have to leave?
My friends,
Mhm.
that experience.
And you were expelled because what? Do you remember the day you got expelled?
I don't remember the day.
Because
but
first you were suspended,
I
right?
was suspended for dropping chili on 2 boys.
Uh-huh.
And I was expelled for verbal retaliation after provocation.
And the other person who provoked you was not.
I don't know. I was
So-
in such shock from that.
Such shock from it. So they were calling you all kinds of names.
Among other things.
Like what?
Words I don't like to use. I guess my kids can use those words better than I can.
Why?
Nigger, bitch, go home, you don't belong here.
What was that first day like, Carlotta?
Well, the first day was rather interesting. We had a few ministers that accompanied us at one end of the walk. The National Guard was there. The governor had stated that the National Guard was there to protect all citizens. And I surely considered myself a citizen. We got there and discovered that the National Guard was really there to keep us out. So it was rather interesting to hear what was being said as to why, we couldn't go.
And once you got in, because we never saw you once you got in, what happened?
Well, it's important to state that we didn't get in the first day.
Right.
We were not allowed to go in. It took several weeks, actually, and a lot
3
of
weeks.
3 weeks, a lot of activity in the courts to finally convince the president that he had to act. And when
We
we,
can't go past Elizabeth, Elizabeth's gauntlet that she walked that first day. She's walking down the sidewalk by herself. She's 5 feet tall. And these guards are lined up and armed and keeping her out. And that has been a part of her life, all of her life. We can't go past that. She's not with us here, but it's important to remember that this child stood up against this entire army of armed people.
Because she was the first.
Well, she got
She was
separated from us because she had no phone.
I would like for somebody, one of you, whoever wants to paint the picture of once you got inside, what happened?
well, when we finally got in, we had armed escorts. We had people with guns standing outside the
That's right.
classroom.
The first day we got in, we went in with 101st Airborne. I remember the click clack of the soldiers' boots on the stairs. And I thought, okay, this is why I salute the flag. This is going to work out. If these soldiers just walk with us this first day into this school, it's going to be okay. So we went in with armed guards and with kids standing in the rafters, just screaming. At one point, it was totally silent. And then all these children standing and bending out of the window screaming, boo, boo. But
Well, it was an atmosphere of hostility, of war.
And Terrence, there was a student named Robin.
Right. She was a student in my algebra class, and I particularly remember her because she was willing to pull her desk across the aisle to abut mine and share her algebra book, which, given that climate, was a pretty bold act on her part.
And she was harassed later.
Oh, yeah,
befriending you.
she and her family, because part of the retaliation on the part of the students and their families were to find out who the white students were who would befriend us and target them for economic retaliation, as well as physical and psychological abuse.
And this is to keep in mind, this is 1957, 58, that anybody white in the South that stepped forward on this issue of race was tarnished immediately.
So her sharing her book with him was a major
Oh,
step.
absolutely.
Well, Terrence doesn't know this, but Robin is here today, so you can thank her. in
Ah,
person.
you tricked me. You said you couldn't find her.
Robin, come on out.
I'm so pleased to be here.
Very good. Very good.
Robin, did you suffer any repercussions for befriending Terrence?
Yes, I did.
You did. What happened?
I was followed home from school by a group of students who threw things at me and spat on me and called me names. And I got a lot of hate calls and hate mail.
Really? Tell me what happens in that moment when you make the decision that you're going to pull your desk over to him. Do you remember what you were thinking? First of all, how old were you?
16.
16.
Terrence walked in and he was so scared. We were all so scared. And he sat down and he didn't have a book and he was lost. And I made the decision, and it's just a gut level decision, that I would share my book with him as I would have shared it with anybody else.
Whoa. So what happened the moment you did that in the classroom? Like, was there dead silence? Did somebody say something to you?
Nobody said anything because we had a wonderful teacher who was in control, Ms. Bogart, who is no longer living. Nobody said anything. It was just dead silence. And I guess there was a gasp of disbelief.
A gasp of disbelief.
But nothing more, because as Robin said, the teacher, and I really felt safe and secure in that classroom because of the teacher.
Did you feel safe in all the classrooms?
No, not at all. This was a very unique experience.
Okay, I'm going to stop it there. I'm going to stop it there for a moment because you know, once again, you have these children, because they are children. They may not be in first grade, 7 years old, whatever, but you have these children who are going to school, and for almost a month they can't even get into the school because you have all this hostility, and the governor of the state is actively trying to keep these children from going to school and learning, and again, I just find it profoundly sad that you're going to school with an armed guard. This is how we're going to school. You're going to school with an armed guard. So again, I say fast forward to 2021 and our history and our school books. Why can't we learn critical race theory? Why can't critical race theory be learned in our schools? Because when the students leave school that day, when the bell rings at 3 o'clock or 3:15 or whatever time they get out of school, they're stepping into a world where there is racism. They are stepping into a world where, people are calling each other names. You have a group of people who think that America should be white. But on the same hand, there are some Black people, who don't like white people, who just, are racist against white people. Yes, there are. So I say, why can't critical race theory be taught in school? And as that one Louisiana, lawmaker said, let's only teach the good part of slavery. Which is a joke. So are we supposed to only talk about the good parts of the civil rights movement? Okay, what good parts would that be? The parts where you're going out and hanging people and having lynch parties? Is that the good part? Or is it the part where Black people are marching and we're getting, hosed down and police dogs, set up on us? So what is the good part? Is there a good part? When you talk about civil rights, is there a good part? Because even when civil rights was signed by the president, did anything really change? You can say, oh, we have affirmative action. Oh, we have to hire so many Black people. We have to hire, so many Hispanics, so many Asians, whatever. But has anything really changed from aside from the fact that we are now supposedly free because we don't have physical shackles on us anymore, and yes, there are still people who are still doing menial labor and still out there picking cotton and what have you. But, for the most part, we are free. But are we really? What do you consider? What do you consider freedom? I'm giving thumbs up to someone. What do you consider freedom? So I'm going to continue playing this and for you to listen to the rest of this.
Experience.
I'll always have to say that Mrs. Pickwick, because she was a 5 feet tall, only little shorthand teacher, and that was the only class all day that I felt I wouldn't be killed in.
Yeah, we shared, the boys all shared gym together, and that was hell. I mean, that was hell week rolled up into an hour every day. Either locker rooms that got steamed with hot towels, with glass on the floor, with some sort of harassment. You knew you were going in. When we did gym, it was battle. So you put on your armor, turn your face into your game face, and got ready to go to war. I mean, it was that way every day, and it was further increased. There were teachers, as they're describing, that were helpful. There were others who were indifferent, and then there were some who were beyond indifferent.
Yeah, they were part of the war.
That's right.
Yeah. So did you then befriend him after that, Robin, or was that just one incident in the classroom?
I think during the year,
Oh,
we
yeah,
were friends.
Right. And she was a friendly face I could pick out.
I didn't expect there to be any trouble. It never occurred to me that there would be any trouble. This was something that was going to happen. And as far as a 16-year-old can imagine, it was going to go according to the way the law said it was going to go.
It was really a mob scene, very chaotic. The National Guardsmen.
People
were there.
who are maybe on their own wouldn't have behaved that way, but in a crowd where they're infused
Oh, I
by
think
other
there was
people.
some of that.
Uh-huh.
A lot of groupthink, mob behavior, and really vicious. When you look at the pictures and see the faces, you have no doubt that these are people intent on doing great harm and bodily injury.
You know, a lot of people from out of town, and as I write in my book, my mother almost got hanged that day. People with ropes circled underneath their arm and over their shoulder, as they put it, ready to do business, ready to hang a nigger.
Wasn't that a time? I don't know if, did you recognize it at a time? Because I was born in Mississippi in 1954, Mississippi being the worst lynching state in the world at the time, that if you were a Black male, it didn't matter what you did. You walked down the street the wrong way, you looked the wrong way, you know.
Well, somehow we believed that we weren't in Mississippi. That's
Yeah.
what we thought.
Yeah.
And that Arkansas, Little Rock was going to be different from Mississippi. Well, this touched the raw nerve, the edge, the end of the nerve, and all of this came oozing out. All of this racism, all of this vengeance, all of this vileness, all came to the surface.
Okay, so I am going to stop it there. There we go. Okay, so I can keep going. Does anyone have anything that they want to add before I keep going?
Wow.
Hold on, I'm sorry.
Look at this. This feels so natural and so lightweight, and it does not feel.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so does anyone have anything that they want to, add, or I can keep going? Because again, I'm, the fact that someone has to go to school like this, when you're trying to learn. I mean, it's already stressful, just having to do the homework and study and, just, to pass your classes, to make sure that you're keeping up. But, this added stress, and meanwhile, you have some, like with Ruby Bridges, you have white parents who, for a whole year didn't put their kids in school. We weren't talking because there was a pandemic and you can get online and do Zoom, or, you can, sit around in someone's backyard 6 feet apart and you can still have lessons. I mean, you kept your children out of school because you did not want your children going to school with someone of a different race, color. They don't look like you. They don't live next door. They live across town. It's just amazing to me. It is amazing to me. So let me see. I think I have someone who is trying to, I could be wrong. Shy Lady, did you want to say something? Let me do that. Okay, well, if you want to jump in, you want to interrupt, if anyone wants to jump in or interrupt or use chat, to send me a message, feel free. That's fine. Okay, so now I would like to go into, do we have someone who wants to say something?
Hello.
Okay, I am here. I can hear you.
Okay, I had some problems, but I've been wanting to say something, but I had some problems because I had clicked over from the video and it just got kind of messed up. Anyway.
Well, you are here now.
I think the conversation is very, very, very good, and even in what's going on with today, I thought about previously how you had mentioned a class that needs to be inputted or suggested for, to talk about racism. And when you mentioned that, it reminded me of my children when they were in, and they went to a school where the district was, I want to say, they grew up in the Dallas, Texas area. I want to say that the demographics were probably at this time around 30% Black, 30% white, 30% Hispanic, and then the rest other. And there was there was a small Asian population as well. And I remember when they were in elementary school, they had several white friends. And by the way, my children are Black. They had several white friends. And around the time that they got to middle school, like the last year, all of a sudden things started to change. They noticed that their white friends, and I grew up in Chicago where it was very segregated. And around the time that they were in the 8th grade, I want to say, things started to change for them. Their white friends were not easily available for them to reach out to go to the movies with. It was almost like they distanced themselves. The same thing, my daughter is older than her brother by a year and a half, a little less than a year and a half. And she told him what she had experienced, and he was, coming to her. He was now in 8th grade. She's sophomore in high school. And he's like, what happened? Things are not like they used to be. She said, well, what happened to you is what happened to me and a lot of other people. Once you get around 8th grade, your white friends suddenly stop associating with you. They start hanging around more white kids. They even disassociate with some of the Hispanic kids. And that's what happened to them. And I have a niece who went to private schools in the Chicago area, and they're around my children's age, and a little bit younger than my daughter. And I remember her mom telling me that, when you used to tell me about what happened with your kids, the same thing happened with mine. All of a sudden, once they got ready to go to high school, their white friends, stopped hanging around and stopped speaking with them.
Okay,
so when you mentioned the class.
Let me stop you for one moment. Do you think that's because their parents directed them to, or do you think that the kids themselves all of a sudden had an awareness that, oh, they're Black and we need to start hanging out with more white people? I mean, what do you think happened there?
The latter, because the parents were always cool. They would invite the kids over, even pick them up to go to the movies. They would have game nights over at their house on the weekends, and they would have the mom would go and buy a bunch of food, and sometimes I would do the same thing, have their kids over, but their moms were always very welcoming to my kids, and just was very encouraging. And then all of a sudden, it's like the kids just, and it kind of was sad for me because my kids were really hurt once they found out that their white friends recognized that they were Black. And they were like, wow, we were so close when we were in 3rd grade and 4th and 5th and 6th. Now all of a sudden I see her in the hallways and she acts like she doesn't know me, or she barely speaks. And you know, and I don't think it was my kids who changed. It was them who had changed, because my kids had always liked these particular kids, these particular groups of kids. And when they stopped getting the phone calls to come over to hang out, when they stopped calling her and my son to get together and let's go watch Elf or whatever. I remember that was like the last of the Innocents or whatever. I think it was. They went to the movies. No, it was the Alvin, the Chipmunk. I think that was kind of like the last incident where they went out as a group, and it seemed like after that, I think they may have been in the 7th or 8th grade at that time, and all of a sudden things just changed. They just kind of went their separate ways. But I don't think it was so much the parents.
Do you still see these children who are now, I'm sure, older? Do you still see them out and about town or the neighborhood or anything like that?
No, I asked my son if he was friends with any of them on Facebook. He's like, no, I don't know what so-and-so's doing. I don't know what that one is doing. You know, it was like at that time, once they got into high school, they just kind of, a couple of them went to different high schools in the area. But from that time, they kind of like lost contact. That was kind of the end of it. But I know they went to different schools within colleges. Some of them went off out of the state, but in the region. And then some of them stayed and went to school in college. But nobody really knows like what they're into, because they just pretty much cut off communication with my kids.
You know, and I think that's sad. And I'm actually going to use your last. I'm going to use your last comment to. Can you still hear me? Uh-oh, there we go. Are you there? Okay, hold on.
Many of the people who stood by and did absolutely nothing were contributors to a lot of the hatred that went on. Gene, what do you want to say about that?
Well, I had, Melba, you were in my homeroom. And I did see thumbtacks put on your chair. And Ernest, I was in your gym class. And I saw the results of your gym clothes when someone had urinated through the vents on your clothes. I did witness the wet towels that were tied in knots. I was 15, 16 years old, and most of these kids, you can't see past your nose. And you don't understand, or you don't realize what impact this is going to have on future generations. You react to a situation. And
did you feel badly then doing nothing?
I felt bad because we're all people. I was going to school with friends who I had gone to elementary, junior high with. I did not understand then why you all wanted to come to Central High School, why you would want to leave your friends, things that you knew, that you were comfortable with, why you would even want to be with me. there were 1,800 kids in that high
It wasn't
school.
about being with Eugene. It was about getting. It
When
really
I say
wasn't.
me- When I say me, I'm talking about 1,800.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but I think that's, you give me an opportunity to make a good point
Right.
here. It wasn't about, we just want to be with white kids. It was
Right.
about being able to have the facilities and the books and an equal education.
Right, and I agree. with
Now
you.
you get it, right?
I
Please
am
tell me you
mature
get it
now.
Yeah,
I am
good.
mature now. I have the power of reasoning.
Right,
Back then, I had no, you react to a situation.
yeah. And you got pulled out of school after 1 month. Your parents did, right? Because
Yes. And he was talking about not being raised in a racist family. I was raised in a racist family. And the main reason I want to be here today is to tell you how regretful I am for causing what should have been the best year of your life the most miserable. I went alone because I was afraid. You can't imagine for 38 years how badly I have felt. That does not do anything for what happened. That does not, I'm just sorry. I'm very sorry.
And what are you most sorry about? The way you behaved, the way you were thinking, the way you were raised, what?
For not doing what I knew was wrong. I can tell you that every day of my life at Central was in fear. I cannot remember my homeroom teacher's name, but I can remember on the corner of 14th and Park Street, white men trying to turn over a 1954 Chevrolet with an elderly black man in it. The fear, to this day, I get chill bumps. I did nothing. I went alone. My participation was chanting. But it was awful. And I was so afraid, and I knew it was wrong. I was only 15, but at the time I knew I was wrong.
You were afraid of retaliation from your white friends?
From my white friends, from my family. I can't tell you things that was said in my home, and I'm sorry about that. I can do nothing about that.
What were they saying to you at home?
You're not going to school with those niggers. I'm sorry. This is what I was raised. This is how I was raised. And it was awful. And I am so regretful.
Did you break the chain? If you were taught racism at home, did you break that chain at home?
I broke
with your
that
children?
chain with my children.
That's very, very key to me.
That's what I think I've done wrong.
Gina, are you sorry? Did you?
Yes, I am sorry. Certainly.
But did you feel powerless then?
I felt powerless. Also, peer pressure has a lot to do when you're at that age.
Well, and I think Gene represented probably the bulk of students that did nothing.
Right.
It was silence.
But you all say you remember Robin. I remember you saying that.
Well, Robin.
You remember Robin smiled because Robin befriended all
Robin
of
was
you.
one of the few faces that was friendly.
And many days when somebody's beating you in the back with a tennis racket, you spitting up blood, or somebody's putting acid in your eyes, the only thing you got is a smile.
It's the great silence. It's the silence. It's the people who don't speak up. And if there's any lesson to be learned, now 30, almost 40 years now, Gene will admit he should have spoken up, and hopefully somebody watches this show and will be moved enough to stand up for something that's right.
I'm excited to get.
Okay, so again, I apologize. Worst thing to happen, I had a power surge and everything went off and came right back, but I apologize, it interrupted the show. And I apologize if it knocked anyone off. But basically, you know, I just want to end this show with, I just want to end this show with the 1619 Project, or anything, any history any history about this country is important. Because as I do my show, I'm going to be taking us back in history. I'm going to be going way, 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 way back. Because there's so many good things about this country. But there are also so many bad things about this country. You know, so we have to recognize our past in order to, you know, move into our present and move into our future. And like Ruby Bridges said, it's going to be up to the children. This is going to be up to our children who are going to be able to move us forward. So in order to do that, we are going to have to stop hating. We are going to have to stop, you know, the divisiveness and, you know, the insurrections, you know, and yes, protest. I absolutely believe in protest, but do it in a peaceful way. You know, we don't have to, destroy anything, you know, but at the same time, you know, we have to make sure that our voices are heard. We have to make sure that we vote to make sure that we can make sure that, you know, critical race theory is taught in class, that the true history of slavery is taught, that the true history about civil rights and the Civil War and the Revolutionary War, you know, everything is taught. When we talk about the Pilgrims, we need to also talk about what was really going on with the Native American Indians, because even when the Mayflower came over, they were getting screwed over. I mean, there's just so much about our history that we have to talk about. You know, so to the Ruby Bridges, to the Little Rock Nine, I say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because if it were not for you, if it were not for people like you who were so brave to do what you did, for your parents to be brave enough to allow you to go to these schools, to be harassed and tormented, you know, day after day after day, I may not be where I am. You know, there are a lot of people who may not be where they are. Oprah may not have been in the position to, you know, she wouldn't have been in the position to interview you, let alone probably anyone else. So I thank you. You know, you are heroes, and you're heroes that America needs to see. So on that note, I am going to sign off. I'm going to say, continue to speak your truth. And thank you for coming. Thank you for your input. And I will see you tomorrow. My turn to talk. I'm Solid Blue Sister. Have a good afternoon. Bye.